Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the Gambling Databases research team, and our job is to get past the speculation and give you the real data on the global iGaming landscape.
We look at everything. The local rules, the taxes, player experience, what it's actually like for operators.
All to give you a clear, data-driven picture of how this industry really works market by market.
And today, we're looking at Jordan. It is a fascinating case study, a real study in contrast.
It really is. On one hand, you look at the numbers, the metrics,
Yeah.
and you see this beacon of digital opportunity.
Totally. But then you read the fine print. You look at the proposed laws, and what you see is a regulatory nightmare. I mean, it's almost uninvestable.
And that's the tension we need to unpack. The legal status is, and I'm quoting here, largely prohibited with emerging online discussions.
Which sounds pretty standard for the region, right? But then you look at the foundation, the actual consumer, and you see the market is completely wired.
What are we talking about numbers-wise?
We're talking 90% internet penetration. And mobile penetration is at 96%. It's staggering.
So you have this perfect, digitally ready population just waiting.
Waiting under a legal structure that seems, almost designed to keep international capital out. It's a fundamental contradiction.
Exactly. So that's our goal for this analysis. First, we'll break down the metrics that create this theoretical lure. The siren song for investors, if you will.
Then we get into the nuts and bolts, the proposed financial architecture, the regulatory side of things.
And finally, the reality check. We'll get into the critical, non-negotiable risks that have given Jordan one of the lowest operator ease scores we have ever seen in the Middle East.
Okay, so let's start with the good news. What makes this market look so attractive on paper?
Demographics, right off the bat.
It stands out immediately. I mean, you have a population of 11.1 million, which is a modest size.
But that's not the key number.
No, the key number is the median age. It's only 23.8 years old.
23.8. Let that sink in. If you are an operator focused on digital entertainment, on mobile consumption, that is a goldmine.
It signals a native familiarity with tech. Short-form content, rapid adoption of new platforms, it's all baked in.
And this directly feeds into the growth projections, which are, frankly, pretty wild.
They are, assuming, and this is a big assumption, that regulatory liberalization actually happens. Our sources estimate the online gaming market could hit $300 million US.
And how quickly?
Within 3 to 5 years. And crucially, that's supported by a forecasted compound annual growth rate, a CAGR, of 8.5%. For a developing economy, those are not small numbers.
And it gets even more interesting when you look at how they'd consume this content. It's not just a young market. It's an entirely mobile-first market.
Completely. Smartphone adoption is above 85%, and they're building the infrastructure to support it.
The 5G rollout.
Exactly. 5G rollout began this year, 2024, in the major cities, Amman, Zarqa, Irbid. That kind of digital jump means players aren't held back by slow networks.
No reliance on old-school fixed broadband. So what does their behavior look like now, even in the informal market?
The profile's really clear. Players prefer short, frequent sessions on their phones. The most popular activities are the classic engagement drivers: sports betting, lotteries, and a lot of informal poker.
Okay, but we have to talk about purchasing power. The GDP per capita is quite low, right? Around $4,100 US.
It is. Yet, the sources estimate the average revenue per user, the ARPU, is a surprisingly robust $250.
So how do you square that circle? What does that disconnect tell us?
It tells us two things. First, the wealth is concentrated. The spending is happening in urban hubs where disposable income is higher.
Okay.
And second, it suggests that the players who are active right now are highly engaged. They're willing to spend, which shows a really strong consumer demand that's just being met offshore or informally at the moment.
And you mentioned concentration. Where is all this happening?
It's highly urban. I mean, Amman alone has about 4.5 million people. That's around 40% of the entire country's population.
Which, in theory, makes things easier.
In theory, yes. It means marketing, licensing, infrastructure. It's all focused and scalable. Less complexity than a countrywide deployment.
Okay, so the lure is established. Young, concentrated, digitally savvy consumers who are already spending. Now we have to shift to the structure being proposed.
The regulatory blueprint. This is the theoretical market, because remember, right now there are 0 licensed online operators.
The promise is huge, but the rule book is everything.
Precisely. And the proposed structure, which is overseen by the Ministry of Interior, is actually very detailed. It suggests they're serious about this.
Let's start with the cost of entry. What are we looking at for licensing fees?
The proposed annual fee is 50,000 US dollars. And on top of that, an estimated application fee of 10,000.
And the license lasts for?
3 years is the expected duration.
Those fees are, frankly, very low. I mean, compared to established markets in Europe or North America, an application fee alone can be six figures.
Exactly, and that's the tell.
So is this an attempt to attract a high volume of smaller operators? Or is it masking something else?
It's the latter. The low fee is the open door, but the requirements that follow are the bouncer. The state knows the real money isn't in licensing fees, it's in taxation.
Right. So let's talk taxes. What are operators looking at?
So you have your standard corporate tax rate of 20%, which is manageable, but the gross gaming revenue tax, the GGR tax, is tiered. And this is where you see the state's strategy.
Okay, unpack that tiered structure. What signals is the government sending with these different rates?
Well, it's 15% GGR for slot games and lotteries. That's the lowest rate.
So they're encouraging high-volume, predictable revenue stream.
Exactly. Low-margin products that generate frequent, steady income for the state. Then it jumps to 20% for sports betting. But for poker and table games, the tax hits 25%.
So they're effectively penalizing higher skill, higher value games like poker. That's going to immediately impact the business model for anyone specializing in table games.
It absolutely does. And beyond the taxes, the compliance obligations are, they're rigorous. In some ways, they exceed Western standards.
What does that entail?
Strict age verification using government IDs, comprehensive KYC, and anti-money laundering checks.
All the standards.
All the standards, plus mandatory self-exclusion and limit-setting programs.
And given that high digital penetration we talked about, enforcing these checks would be incredibly efficient. There's really nowhere to hide.
That's a critical point. Digital readiness is a double-edged sword. It streamlines market entry, but it also makes regulatory oversight extremely effective.
What about on the player side? Do customers get taxed on their winnings?
Generally, no, not at the player level. But, and this is important, legislative drafts have indicated they're considering withholding taxes on high-value wins.
Which would add another layer of administrative cost and complexity for the operator.
Of course. So before we get to the really big risks, let's talk about customer acquisition. You can have the best product, but if you can't tell anyone about it...
Your market entry is dead on arrival. What do the advertising rules look like?
They're punitive. A total ban on any broadcast or TV gambling ads. Online promotions are severely restricted. Any sponsorships need explicit prior government approval.
Wow. So you're competing with unregulated offshore sites that can advertise freely, but you, the licensed operator, can't. You just destroy the financial model.
Exactly. Customer acquisition costs are going to skyrocket. That $250 ARPU we mentioned, it becomes meaningless if it costs you $300 to acquire that user.
Okay, that's the perfect transition. This brings us to our final and most important segment, the critical risks and the reality check.
Yeah. If the theoretical market looks challenging, the true regulatory structure is, well, it's a brick wall.
Let's start with the headline number. Our sources give Jordan an operator e-score of 1.4 out of 10.
1.4.
That's classified as prohibitive. To give you some context, even heavily taxed European markets rarely dip below a 4 or 5. So what drives that catastrophically low score?
The core issue is, it's a fundamental incompatibility. The proposed rules are just not compatible with how international corporate governance works.
And what's the biggest deal breaker?
The foreign ownership restriction. This is the one that makes the market, and our sources use this word, uninvestable, for any major publicly listed company.
Unpack that for us.
Yeah.
This is the detail that just slams the door shut.
The proposed regulations mandate a majority local ownership requirement, 51% or more.
51%.
It's a poison pill for global operators. It means a foreign company cannot hold a controlling interest. You are forced to surrender strategic and financial control to a local partner.
And let's be really clear for anyone listening. This isn't just about sharing profits. This is about liability.
That's the key.
It's like you fund 100% of the operation, you carry all the global compliance and reputational risk, but you only get 49% of the vote on critical issues.
Capital allocation, compliance strategy, expansion, all of it. No publicly listed board in the West can accept that. The level of surrendered control and retained liability is just untenable.
And if they did accept it and something goes wrong, if compliance fails or they have a disagreement with their local partner, the enforcement is
Terrifying. It's the only word for it. They don't stop at financial penalties.
Not just fines.
Not even close. Yes, there are civil fines up to $1 million and license revocation, but they also include criminal prosecution and imprisonment for executives and staff.
Imprisonment.
Yes. That shifts the risk from being purely financial to being personal, physical. The second a corporate board sees potential jail time for their executives, that country is immediately off the list. It's a non-starter.
So you have a market that forces you to give up control, and it subjects your leadership to potential criminal prosecution. What about the overhead?
It's also high. Operators have to establish a mandatory physical presence in Jordan, a local office, a registered local office, local resident staff for compliance, and this is key mandated data storage within Jordanian jurisdiction.
So that adds huge fixed cost before you've even made $1 in revenue, and it gives the local government maximum leverage because all your systems, all your people are on their soil.
And when you put it all together, a small market of 11 million people, low GDP per capita, losing control via the local partner rule, no advertising, and high operational overhead. The profitability assessment is, well, it's unequivocally PR.
The digital lure is completely canceled out by the structural risk.
It really is.
So let's bring this home. What does this all mean for you, the listener, watching this market?
The final analysis is pretty stark. Jordan right now is a speculative trap. The promise of that young, connected demographic is powerful, but the reality of criminal liability and surrendering majority ownership just makes it unworkable.
The digital readiness is the siren song.
And the regulatory structure is the reef that will sink your capital.
So the primary takeaway here has to be that market potential means absolutely nothing if the regulatory barriers destroy your operational flexibility and, more importantly, increase personal risk to this level.
The best advice from our sources is just to wait. You have to wait until the first license is actually issued. And you need to see if those ownership rules are clarified or, hopefully, softened.
Until then, the risk-to-reward ratio is just profoundly broken.
What's so fascinating here, though, is how that high digital penetration, which we usually see as a huge positive for operators, actually just makes it easier for the state to enforce its rules.
Through KYC, through AML monitoring.
Exactly. And it raises a really important question for any tightly controlled emerging market. How much value does digital readiness actually hold when the regulatory framework includes personal criminal risk, and that same infrastructure just enables easier state monitoring?
A critical question indeed. We are the Gambling Databases research team, and our aim is to cut through the noise to give you the data that truly matters. For the full text of this and all our other country reports, you can visit our website at gamblingdatabases.com.